All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's episode of Stranger Than Fiction is Minister Imogen. She is involved with the Universal Law Community Trust, and this is a conversation I've been very much looking forward to. Minister M, I appreciate you accepting my invitation to come on Rice TVX. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. I've been waiting to tell everybody about what's been going on with the Universal Law Community Trust, so thank you.
And I'm definitely looking forward to it. We had a conversation last week to kind of get to know each other, and then we had several failed attempts at recording today. One would be kind of on Google's end, and then the rest would be kind of on human error. But we've made it happen. We've got through the introduction, and we are here. For people who are unfamiliar with you, I am going to include links down below for everything that we do talk about on today's show. But in your words, who is Minister M. Oven?
Well, that's who are we? That's the big question. Where do we come from? What we're doing here? All of this information has been given to us by an administrative system through the birth certificate. The name that we think that we have the right to use actually is a copyrighted logo belonging to whoever it was that issued you the birth certificate, such as Crown Corporation if you're in England. I realized by using this, I was actually committing fraud. Not on my soul, really. I was diminishing myself to be a Vatican debt slave, defined as such through something called the Sesquitivie Act of 1666. So I got to the point where I thought, what if I don't do that? What if I don't define myself by this thing? That nobody ever asked me, was I okay with calling myself that anyway? And so when the police were screaming at me, who are you? Where are you from? Where are your papers? And I just said, look, I'm looking for that is the answer. The best that I can define myself as is energy and matter in movement, and I'm ministering that. At that point, when I saw the indoctrination of the receiver of that information, and that all of their indoctrination of the hierarchy system suddenly put me above them in their standing as minister. They were like, minister? Well, I'm you're the minister of the universe. Well, no, I'm just the minister of my own energy and matter. And while it's in movement, it's called rho in Greek. And I realized what happened was that the administrative system that is only actually there to prosecute you for committing that fraud and laying a false claim to something that you're not, to diminish yourself as a Vatican debt slave or as a legal minor or dead lost at sea, that system cannot initiate. Why? Because I didn't use something copyrighted by somebody else. It was something that I created it. It came out of my mouth. Where it came from, I say it came from universal law. And so what we did is we turned that into a legal fiction, a real legal fiction, if there ever can be such a thing, and gave it to everybody to use to reserve their rights from being trespassed upon and being implied to be granting this consent that really represents your share of the planet and its resources to a private corporation such as Crown Corporation or the United States of America or Commonwealth of Australia, capitalized letters, PLC companies that are recorded inside the Securities Exchange Commission. So obviously I practiced this for quite a long time before I came to the general public, if you like, and said, look, people saw what I was doing, opening shops without licenses, doing the exchanges and things that we'll get to later on, and asked me, how is it that I could do this? Well, normally you would be paying fines and taxes and all of those things. And I just said, I've kept myself in unalienable state that I was born into. I've not given my rights away. So I don't have to buy them back then as a privilege. So who I am, I'm still looking for that. All I know is that when I don't use that legal fiction that was on a birth certificate, for example, or a driving license, then I'm not committing fraud. And so, like I say, it keeps my rights reserved. So by giving other people the opportunity to pick that up and use it, it gives you lots of fun. We were just talking a little bit before about We give the legal fiction back to Rome. We surrender that thing that we were using and laying claim to and saying that's mine. And really what we've got then instead is the right of use of everything. Your birthright is stolen from you through the birth certificate, or really your parents give it away. And
Right.
if you don't continue to create that contract by using that legal fiction, then you've got access to all of your resources back in your hands.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, is the minister Moving, is that kind of like an artificial entity that you've created to act as?
It didn't start off like that. Like I say, it came out of my mouth that I'm energy and matter in movement. And so you can call me Minister Moven. And then obviously, as we've moved through this learning process of how that slavery system works, we actually took a document from the Securities Exchange Commission which is part of the Edgar filing system, to the police station and had them stamp. We've got Hellenic Republic stamp acknowledging Minister Emma Venn as our legal filer inside the Securities Exchange Commission. So they can't say that we don't recognize you as Minister Emma Venn because we've got it. Your stamp, is that not your stamp on that piece of paper? And they're like, ah.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like an office in like a trust, how you have so that you can operate in a legal fiction through the office in a way.
Yeah, while this system of commerce, capitalizing on our rights, exists, you need to be able to act in the private. And this is like Rothschild says, own nothing and control everything. And this is why they have these trusts. So the premium, obviously the first trust, the Unum Sanctum, was in 1302, was the Vatican taking control of this rock, planet Earth, and saying,
all the souls and all the flesh and everything else included on the rock.
Exactly. Everything that moves on it.
You say that's the first trust?
Yes.
In your opinion?
Yeah, 1302, Pope Boniface created that. And there's a little video on our YouTube, if you don't mind me speaking about this, on YouTube.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it talks about the birth certificate, and I've done it for homeschooling for children, to make it as simple as possible. It's actually on the Emma Venn channel.
I was going to ask you which one was, like, if there was 2 channels, if there was an official channel, because this is the Emma Venn channel.
Started with this Emma Venn one that you've put up there, and when it all came public in December, we've been working away doing this for just nearly 6 years now in this form. And when somebody covered the story about us stopping UK Government Limited from dissolving itself, which would have rendered you all as bona vacanta if it had been the government, and then they hacked this account. All of the Gmail accounts went down, and we can't upload anymore onto this Emma Venn channel. It's there, look, Minister Emma Venn homeschool sessions. And in there, you've got the birth certificate. You've got videos of us changing the money, opening the shops.
Is that a completely different YouTube channel?
Yes, there's Universal Law Community Trust. Then we had to make another one.
This one here, right?
Yeah, so this is where we've put the recent videos and webinars that we do on there. Okay. Because they just stopped us from being able to upload, and hacked the kindness credits gmail.com with passwords, and said that the passwords that we're putting in are not recognizable. So that was that, really.
I think that was part of our original problem, like we were talking about with recording today, was using our Gmail account to kind of make this publicly available to the powers that be. So we had to use Proton to get a little bit better of encryption to have this particular meeting. One thing I wanted to ask you, and this is just based off what you said, that the legal fiction it's created is not ours, and us using it is a false claim and committing fraud. Yeah. If the name was created by our parents, given to us by our parents, and then there was a bonded surety instrument created and a legal fiction entity created in the process, I would look at it more of fraud on their part, because if this system is used correctly and we were put on the beneficiary side, then this trust wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, because it would be
Exactly,
a
I
way
agree. Yeah, I
it'd
agree
be a
with
way for us to operate. But because we're in the trustee position, it kind of puts us in, kind of in a little bit of a predicament. But I would look at it as more of fraud on their part. And this is the reason why too I wanted to interview you. I wanted to,
yeah.
one, challenge what I think I know, and then we and I towards the end of the conversation, I want to talk about this alliance council thing that we were speaking about last week, and the benefits of bringing people together. So you
It
said you've
is.
been.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to cover that what you said. It is valid, and lots of people have said the same thing. The given name is the name that obviously your mother and father gave you. They looked at this lovely baby, and they didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to call you Fred Smith, last name first, first name last in a capitalized form, and I'm going to create a contract for you, granting all of your rights away to a corporate estate." Now, if the system, if when the mother or father went to the registrar's office and said, "I've had a baby," and the registrar said, "Okay, these are the terms and conditions of you registering the birth of your child with us," and gave full disclosure, there's 5 things that you need in contract, which most people know. Full disclosure, I can't accept or consider which are the other 2 things in a contract that is required in order for it to be valid.
Right.
If you haven't given me full disclosure, I can't meet you at the mind, and there is never any mutual benefit in rendering somebody a slave. So obviously, if the registrar had given that notice to the declarant, then and the declarant had said, "Right, okay, well, hang on a minute, I'm just thinking about that, and I don't think that's a good idea." And also, if they'd have included the fact that the terms and conditions to prevent the child being rendered a Vatican debt slave or dead lost at sea after the age of 7 by the SESCTV Act, what the registrar should have said is you need to bring your child every year for the first 7 years of its life to be evidenced of it still being alive. Otherwise, it's going to be presumed that it's not. Now, that is full disclosure. But
Yeah.
then it also comes down to us with due diligence.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But it's a catch 22, because I'm pretty sure that our education system is a big fault. And then you got to put into the mainstream media and news and the conditioning that we've been put in, the propaganda that's been spread to people. This could even be like forms of magic being used, as far as I'm concerned. And it could be
Yes.
putting people under spells. So it's,
Oh, yeah.
that's where I've been trying to be compassionate towards the people who look at what I'm doing with this research and think it's crazy. I'm trying to be compassionate, because cognitive dissonance, and then what they've been conditioned with all their life. It's when you start going down these rabbit holes and you start figuring out some of this, and you start realizing we've been lied to, and you still want to find out why, like, what was the purpose of all this? It doesn't really add up to anything other than control. And it's really sad. I was going to ask, you said that as the ULC Trust, Universal Law Community Trust, that you guys have been going for about 6 years. When did you start on this journey personally, and what got you on this path?
Well, I would say all my life, really. I always knew, I remember filling my car up. I got my first car and I'm filling it with fuel. I remember thinking to myself, nobody asked me if I was okay with this. Nobody asked me if I was okay if I work 9 to 5 and pay all this tax and support this tyranny. I could look around, my family, my community, nobody was getting any benefits of being part of this community, this society. And so I went through all of the things that this environment creates within us, because we have got that cognitive dissonance. It's internal warfare. It's like your heart is screaming, this isn't me, I never asked for this, and your mind is saying, shut up, you need to fit in, and all of that. So you have this internal dialogue of complete resistance, and that's why you take drugs, or you drink, or you do all of those things to numb yourself from acknowledging all the belief that you think you can't do anything about it, which then helps the victim state, which then you need a government, don't you? So it all works very well as a nice little cog in this wheel. They depend on you and your ignorance. And so obviously when that is no longer the case with the internet and this all of this information being shared, we haven't got an excuse anymore, really. It's a choice. So after I'd gone through all of that, when I went and did Gamma. I've got a degree in molecular science, and and I thought
Wow.
that made me it. I had this massive ego, and if I couldn't see it, taste it, smell it, which is quite ironic for molecular science because you can't see most of it anyway. I didn't, I wasn't having any of it. So, and my sister actually brought somebody, it was a Reiki healer, to my house. I was an estate agent at the time in the Canary Islands, and I was creating trusts for people at that point as LLPs, so that the people who were buying property in Spain didn't have to deal with something called the Napoleonic law, it's code, which is the direct line of inheritance, to stop the land grabs that lots of people buying property, and then great grandchildren were coming and saying, well, that land that you built the house on, my grandfather didn't have the right to sell it because of the Napoleonic code law,
Okay.
which means that you can't disinherit your generation. So with an LLP, so I was already doing this, all of the bits. I had a money exchange where I would just knock off 1 cent, so that we would be cheaper than the bank, to get the people to come in to change their money, and then they'd see all of the houses, because I didn't charge commission. I was the only estate agent that didn't charge commission. So you might have gone and seen a house with another estate agent in Fuerteventura, for example, and now it's 20,000 cheaper with me, because for me, with the process is the same. Why should I charge you a commission if I have to do the same job every day, which obviously put the cat amongst the pigeons with lots of estate agents and lots of threats and all of that. But I just said to them, how many houses have you sold this week? Well, none. No, because I've sold them all, because they're cheaper with me. It means I get all of the customers. So by making by giving people a benefit, instead of profiting from other people's liabilities and needs, I found that if you help people, then obviously more people can access your services. They can, be more affordable. You've helped them, and protect their assets. And this, anyway, so she turned up with this Reiki master, and I wasn't having any of it. I was like, get out of my house now. And she's like, no, she's really helped me, because she had anorexia, and she's helped her with that. And we went down. I wanted to get rid of her because I didn't understand something. And this is the natural response that we have, that's ingrained in us, isn't
If
it?
it's weird, get away from me. It's the devil. Don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I don't understand. I haven't got it explained. And instead of looking at it, taking it and looking at it, I was a denier of this, she's a fraud and all of this, is what I said to my sister out in the garden while she was giving Reiki to the father of my child. And she's like, no, just, I said, come on, look at, we went down to the restaurant, one of my friend's restaurants, and I was going to humiliate her. I'm very embarrassed to say that that's the kind of anal Nazi corporate slut that I was. And
Corporate slide.
really, really. Went into the restaurant, and I said, right, so come on then, tell us how you make that pendulum, because she got this pendulum and it looked like her hand was moving while she was using it. And so I said, tell us how you're making that pendulum move like that. Is it with magnets? I'm trying to take the mickey out of her now. And she said to me, everybody can do this because it's your energetic field. that we're connecting with. And especially somebody like you, who's been a healer in every one of their 96 lives. That's what she said. And I was just like, yeah, right. Give me the pendulum. So she's passed me the pendulum over the table. I've called all my friends over. Look at me. I'm the healer from 97 lifetimes ago, like this. I said, right, tell me what I do with it. So she said, well, you ask it, what is your answer for yes? So I'm like, I'm going to ask it, what is my answer for yes? And this pendulum set off swinging, right? And my sister tells this story much better than I. I'm now under the table looking for the magnet, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and to come out, and they said that my face, my whole expression, I'd gone back to zero. And I went outside, and obviously all my friends are now laughing at me because I made myself out to be the fool. And I stood outside in the street, and I was like, now I didn't know anything suddenly. Everything that I thought I knew suddenly just disappeared. And so I went to 0 point really and started again. And so I trained in Reiki. I put as much effort and energy into researching that as I'd done with studying for molecular science. And do you know what I found? Both same thing. They're both the same thing, but they've been given these definitions, man-made definitions, to try to define this thing that's indefinable. And I mean, it didn't stop there. These are just little awakenings. It was just, going along then from, that was kind of 2006. And it takes a lot. If you think of yourself like with layers of paint, of this glosser that we've picked up and used, and I had to chip it all away. And it's scary to start with, that feeling that I had when I was standing in the street. I was like, oh, what the hell? I don't know anything. I don't know that, and then I opened a happiness center. I was working back in the system. Before that, I was working for De Beers, who are an investment company. When they're selling you on the stock exchange, they are a hotel chain when they're using hotels, and they dig the resources out of the ground as De Beers diamonds.
Right.
Slave trade there. So, and I'd done some gamma work in England before I'd left for South Africa, and then I did another gamma session with somebody in Cape Town, and even at that point, I still didn't think that it made any difference at all to me, because there was no real change in my life around me. The life was still the same. But I went into work and I just did the same thing as I always do. And this time, after this gamma, I'm sitting there, I'm pissed off because I thought that this guy has ripped us off for the money for the gamma weekend. And I turned the console on, and suddenly it was all of these numbers on the screen, just the same as before. How can a number choose? How can a number choose between a Volkswagen or Audi or HP Sauce or Heinz or Nestle over Heinz or Coca-Cola over Pepsi? It can't. A number cannot choose. And that question had never entered in my head before. Why? I don't know. Maybe the money was too good. Maybe, my house was too big and all of that, because that kind of distracts us away from what the hell is it that I'm actually doing. And I put my own national insurance account number in, and there were 77,000 companies trading in that particular forum on my life. And
where did you, just out of curiosity, because you had access to a lot of different investment companies and such, where are you able to look that information up? Because I'm not able to. A lot of people can't find it apparently right now, like through Fidelity.
Yeah, on Fidel, there was. I think this is in the background of their actual what you would be assessing all of this information. So it's inside their actual system. So
On the back end,
as a broker, yeah, in the grey screens we're talking about now. At the front end, people could go onto Treasury Direct and see. It's only a hypothesis. It's only what's the word? Like an overview. If you bought bonds, any bonds, those serial numbers with those that face value on them, you would have made that amount over that period of time.
Okay.
The fidelity.com was much better. But also you can go into GMEI utility, you can go into Glyph, GLI,
GMIEU, GMIEU.
GMEI, GMEI, GMEI utility.
Okay.
And this is because they're using you and the choices that you make as a utility transmitting account. You are transmitting energy into their universal vortex bank, if you like. All of your energy is going in there, your belief, your choices. You know, we think we've got free choice, but even when it comes to voting, you've got a list of somebody, all these people who've already been chosen for you to choose from. Where's the choice in that? You know,
Right.
it's not, there's no free will in there at all. And GMEI utility, we showed so many people here in Greece with it, in Elada. And we found that these companies, so you can put in your national insurance number or your social security number in there, and you could see these different legal entities that were trading on you. And if you go onto our Facebook group, I actually pulled an excerpt out of this of a company that had been trading on my NI number. And it was called Gateway Drive, 122 Gateway Drive, something like that. And it's an office. It starts off, it's like, I don't know how many pages, hundreds and hundreds of pages to explain. I wanted to know who did this LEI, legal entity identification number, represent. And it started off, it's 2,800 Gateway Drive is an office. And it rents itself to another office, and that office rents itself to another office, and so on until it's a tower block. Then it becomes 2,801 Gateway Drive. Now it's a street. And what they're doing is they're building virtual reality. The next thing, it's a street, it's a town, it's got a casino, it's an army base, it's got hospitals, and then it talks about credit, revolving credit facility, and so on and so forth, all the way down, and right at the bottom, what is it represents? Key West Holdings. Now, Key West Holdings are one of the largest investment companies in the world, with lots of different legal entities branching off it. And they're all trading on your life. So when that birth certificate, or even before that, when your mother goes to the doctor and says that she was pregnant with the baby, at that point, there is an account opened. And they'll gamble whether the child's dead or alive, boy or a girl, vaccinated, not vaccinated, will it be breastfed, so on and so forth. So it is your potential creation that has been gambled on. And what you're actually doing is you are underwriting, you are the indemnity of all of this administrative commercial code. And so I contacted Key West Holdings, put them on notice, and told them that they had to cease and desist immediately from trespassing on my rights.
Were you working as in the investment field when you did this?
No, I blew the whistle while I was in there. I did a whistleblowing. You go into the Securities Exchange Commission, and I think that's why I'm not dead yet, because I did it as a whistleblower. Everybody's asked me that.
You went public with this information?
Yeah, I'm absolutely, I'm public with it. But what happens is that I do all of these videos and they get blocked. So I'm shadow banned on Facebook. I've got over 5,000, there's 5,000 people now in the group, 5,000 friends there. And, you know, I get 120 posts for each if I'm lucky. On my own page, I've got 3 posts for each on some of them. So
yeah, it's a good old AI algorithm. They've got trained to shadow ban and basically try to make you look like you're not even there on the internet.
Yeah, and then what they do is they create the things like Quataloos, that oh, she's a fraud and she's done all of these things. And my answer to that is, if I had done all of these things that they've said that I have, then I'd be in prison.
Well, what was it specifically that caused the transition from you to go from this corporate slut to this loving, kind people that I'm talking to right now?
Well, that's always been there. I've always been and what I've done is over the years, I realized I put these layers on, and you build yourself a mask, you build yourself a persona to move through and interact with the other corporate sluts, let's say. Um, and so when I discovered that I'd actually been not just a creditor, but also I was a sole trader. And I don't mean SOLE. And all of my life had been built off this, the back of this. I didn't want it anymore. And so I went back to England. I just lived in a tiny little house. I was 6 months there, and I'm thinking it's either going to go one way or the other. I've either got to do something about it constructively, or I'm going to go way, way, way worse than I ever was before, with self-abuse, with substances, alcohol, things like that. And
Yeah.
obviously now at this point, I've got a small child, and that wasn't an option. Obviously, even while you're working your way through that, it's still a difficult place to be in, knowing all of that and looking at your fellow beings, and then driving yourself mad the other way because you're trying to help the people. And so I set up the Free Energy Party UK. I was working with Dave Parker from Free Energy Party in America, and they'd seen all of my Facebook posts and things when people could see my Facebook posts, and asked me would I stand for to be their leader. And I said, look, I'm really not. But what I will do is I'll register for Free Energy Party UK in England, and we are the only political party to tell you not to vote. So they sanctioned us. They sanctioned us and embargoed us, but it meant as a political party, I could go in the street with the lads with the megaphone. So I did. I went into the shopping centres and I'm shouting at the people about the Treaty of Nice. You've lost your habeas corpus rights. They're throwing veg at me and telling me to F off. And I was like, well, we went, and I was then the Sheriff of Dorset under the Common Law Court. I stood for them, swore my oath, went down the common law route, Article 61. We went and to exemplify, does it work? Is it, has it got any standing, this thing that we're all running around shouting about? And so we went and got our community together. I went door to door. I got about this piece of land that was just going to go to, it was not being used. And I went door to door and got 180 people to say yes, that they would come and put 5 hours a week in, which is using the Ubuntu structure. So like the question that you asked me when we first...
Ubuntu, is that what you said?
Ubuntu.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, and so when you asked me before about, you wanted to vet me, really, didn't you, to make sure that I wasn't going to be like, ugh. I'm glad to say I passed the test.
To pause on that, that was just because I wasn't sure how open-minded you were to anything outside of natural law. That was all.
Well, this is it. Everything made from universal law, isn't it? We can't do anything without it. We can't blink and breathe. We can't argue whether it exists or not without universal law. So, the common law, the commercial code, the sin tax fraud, the live life claims, all of these things that people are doing, we've got to stop dividing ourselves up by these definitions and bring it all together. So we brought the Free Energy Party in, brought the common law in, tested it all out. How can we move through this, reserving all of our rights, being able to share this information, and use this structure, like you said, it's a very good structure if it's used right. So then we get back to the right of use. We only have the right of use, and we have the obligation to use it right. So the going through the common law thing, I swore my oath to Baron Rutledge, and we wanted to exemplify this land being put back in the hands of the people to grow their food. We were going to put solar panels in there. The energy was going to be used to discharge the council tax liabilities for the people of the community. We had so much support, and the council took the proposal and said, if. somebody was going to do a project such as this, they would decide who. Now, that's under the Localities Act. So when they privatised our public services, in order for them to be able to do that, they had to write some legislation. And this is the Localities Act in England. Localism Act. And the Localism Act allows for the people to choose, who do you want your public services to be operated by? Now, obviously, at the moment, it's a complete click, because you've got the Corporate Council issuing these tenders, accepting these contracts, giving these contracts to people who tender for their buddies, which is why,
Right.
you know, you've got private prisons in the name of Serco, for example, or the ex-prime minister granting her husband the right for growing cannabis. It all stays in that pot, because we have not got the organization in the same way that they have, and that is all that we need, is the organization. So with the Localism Act, you can nominate another private police or private protection instead of the police. Why? Because the police became a private corporation. They're registered inside Dun & Bradstreet and Company's House, and they're not operating under the sovereign state anymore, because that's gone. We're not a sovereign state. We never really were. I mean, the Queen is a Nazi, and you know, they won the war, and that's why, you know, it is up to us to get ourselves together. We've all run companies, so many millions of people run companies. So look at Company's House, they register. And so if we turn around and said, look, here's my share of the water, the electricity, the resource, this rock, and here it is inside this community pot now. I want to know who wants to use my share of the water to make sure the water is clean, to provide it to the people, and provide that service instead. Well, we've got a group of guys over here who want to do that. They want to create energy from the water as well while they're at it. So now you've got your own energy cooperation. So instead of corporation, it's a cooperation. So if everybody did that, and everybody said, right, so they can have the birth certificate back, because I know that what it actually means is my share of the planet's resources are being implied to belong to somebody else, then I'm giving that thing back that I keep incriminating myself with. And I'm going to take my share of whatever it is without its contaminated slave token worth being added to it, because that's theirs as well. And I'm just going to say, right, okay, guys, as a community, what do we need? We need clean water. We need houses for the people, so they've got right to shelter. We've got the rights. So just look at the rights that we've already been set out for us. The right to contract or not contract. Okay, well, I have the right to contract or not contract, and I'm not contracting with you. Who I'm contracting with, it's a porito. It's under non-disclosure. I don't have to tell you who it is I've given my rights to. All you need to know is it's not yours. I haven't given them to you. So a lot of people have come and said, oh, I don't want to assign my consent because that's what the government gets to do. What you're actually doing is you're stopping your consent from being implied to be given to anybody except yourself. And what you do with it is no longer public asset. It's private. So you step back into your private, you create your private community, your own private organizations, and that is you assigning your consent. It's not something you can pick up and put in your pocket, you know.
I was going to say that kind of reminds me of the PCA, PMA, like the Private Society, Private Member Association, Private Contract Association. So it's kind of, it sounds in a way as if like what you've done with the community is just kind of combine a lot of different aspects of law that you utilize when you need to utilize them. And I look at it kind of like tools. You know, there's a time and a place for the contract law to come into play, and there's a time and a place for the common law and for the trust to come into play. So it's a matter of using the right tool at the right time. It's a perfect example when somebody says, do you use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail? So it's, there's obviously a use case for everything. And that's, after we started talking last week, that's what gave me that idea that it's not limited to just natural law. It's just, I agree, natural law should and does technically supersede all other law. But does the rest of the world technically recognize that? Unfortunately, we've had this artificial matrix created, and that's become people's reality. And
Create it though. That's the irony of it. It doesn't exist without us. The minute you stop crediting that matrix fiction, they haven't got you and they need you to create it for them. In fact, it's not a them and us, it's us. We're actually claiming against ourselves. It's like having two cars on the drive, you're insured in both, and you drive one into the other. Can you claim against yourself? No, you can't. It's fraud.
right,
So what they've done, what we've allowed them to do, rather, or what we did is we gave our rights away, and we said, I'm not bothered about anything really. I just want to go to the beach and drink beer and have clean water coming out of my tap when I come back home. Well, okay, that's what the government said. We'll set up this nice trust for you boys and girls and look after all of your rights so that you don't have to worry your pretty little heads and go and live your lives. And we want to play a little game of commerce between our private corporations, and it's never going to step across into your private parts, which is what I do. Now you're trespassing all over my private parts. I haven't got a contract with you. That's forced commercial intercourse, which is statutory rape. Any kind of intercourse that is not with consent is rape. You are attempting to rape me of my rights, but actually you're not, because I've just given you them. So I've given you my rights, then I'm standing there saying, you look what you did with my rights. Well, that's because you didn't bother to take care of them yourself. You didn't self-determine. So
right,
if we determine things for ourselves, and it's that level of the mind, when we talk about being a secured party, we're not talking about a UCC definition. We're talking about, are you secured in the mind to what you credit as a being, as a creator, as a creditor of this reality? Do you take responsibility for what it is that you, first of all, that you do, how you do it, and who is it that is the beneficiary of you and your actions? And you take that back. So the trust within the trust within the trust, which is what they created with the Vatican. And going back to that question about that everybody doesn't recognize it, the word Katholiki in Greek means universal. So here you have
Catholic,
Catholic,
Catholic. Okay,
Katholiki means universal. So here you have the Vatican upholding universal law, because without it, it couldn't exist, and creating these private corporations and agencies administrative system to lead you into temptation, to see whether you are going to commit fraud on your soul for a little bit of convenience, even if it's for your freedom. Now, if I take you and say, right, I'm not going to let you go until you tell me who you are using that legal fiction that I recognize, and because I don't even know what I'm doing, behind me here is a money laundering and an asset laundering system that can only be opened by you saying, yes, that's your, like, that is what I am. I am that I am, that's it. I'm not going to give you consent to go and trespass on my rights, to then use the funds that you've created from trespassing on my rights to pay for my stay in a Greek prison or any other prison. We're
right,
all in a prison, a prism of trapped energy, universal source energy, that I believe has trapped itself to examine itself in 3D, having a 3D experience. It's multidimensional of beings that we are. And we diminish ourselves into, just this flesh and bone and ego, if you like.
yeah. No, I would agree 100%. I do want to learn more about the Universal Law Community Trust, but before we get into that, something that you were kind of touching on, and it's just kind of a simple question. In your journey and studying the legal fiction and all these different forms of law and this deception that's taken place via the Vatican, creating us all as debt slaves, Um, when it comes all the way down to it, and the idea of what's going on, do you consider this to be spiritual warfare and spiritual in nature?
Energy, the universe is energy, isn't it? It's negative and positive, alpha and omega. And I believe it's compound alpha and omega compounded in phi. We see that everywhere. What the frequency is that we are creating is fear and hate. And so we've created this environment for us to exist in where we suffer from this perpetual fear of loss. Now, if I don't own anything, can I lose it? If I don't own it, can you steal it? If I don't own it, can somebody come and take it away? And so what we've done is we've allowed that thing that we really all have got, which is the one frequency which creates everything, which we call love. But the word in Greek for, if you spell the word love the way it sounds, is Baal, backwards. We're using these words that create a vibrational field that we don't even know about, using this Babylonian language that we've been given, and we even correct one another about it, where you put the comma or you have it, there and your and here and where are you getting your definitions from? Write your own. And the minute that you start to write your own glossary, I did this in a court regarding that land at Magna Road that we took and gave back to the people. And I ended up with 40 armed police officers with their guns because we had a chainsaw inside, and the bailiffs came and tried to pull our house down while we were chopping wood, sawing wood. So they called the armed police. So there's a video of that. That's under the Bournemouth and Poole Free Energy project that we did. BBC got a hold of us, called me a domestic terrorist, said that I was never paid my debts and all of this, because obviously we were discharging debts for people. I'd given my legal fiction to a whole street in Bournemouth, and the whole street had me standing surety to them as the council tax. So all of these things I've already been practicing, and then just put it all together. People have asked me, what about council tax? What about this? Well, this is what I did. I took my number plates off. I exported my conveyance into another community, another state, an indefinable state. And I'm covered. I'm indemnified with my share of the planet and its resources, which is the rock that has always been standing surety to us anyway. From that, then obviously we led into using that rock as our money, because the rock actually backs the money on the stock exchange, or the piece of paper that you've got in your pocket. It's all backed by the mineral wealth, the food, the oil, all of that is already. And what is it? It's the rock. So putting all of those things together, and going and trying these different things out, because you only know from practice. So otherwise everything's theory. Go practice it. Go stand in front of somebody and say, my name's Minister Emma Venn, and see what happens. I go and give your birth certificate back at the police station and say, right, I'm reporting myself for committing fraud. Oh, well, you're reporting yourself. Well, yeah. What have you been committing fraud on? Oh, I think I might have been committing fraud on myself or you or the system. I don't know. But it's come to my attention that this is not mine. It's got Crown copyright on it. And so I've been using something that's not mine without a right of use. I haven't got a license. Nobody gave me a license to use it and say it was okay. I called the Home Office and I said, have I got a right of use of this? And they put the phone down on me. So I give it back to the police. The police give you a receipt to say, here's a paper to say you haven't got any papers. Voila. So when the police then come screaming at you and say, give us your papers, I've got a piece of paper here. And when the police gave me that piece of paper, I looked at it and I said, even your paper's lying. And the copper said, what do you mean? And I said, well, this piece of paper says I haven't got any papers. He says, you haven't? I said, I've got this piece of paper. This piece of paper says I haven't got any papers, so it's lying because I've got a piece of paper
saying that you don't have no papers.
How can and so when you start to unravel all of this complete psychoticness, and you get back to your basic self, and at that level, then you can start again. Then you can start to say, right, okay, If I am a master manifester, I want to see sponges on the beach. Then you go to the beach and the beach is full of sponges. And then you start to say, right, okay, I want a happiness center. I haven't got any money and I want to open a happiness center. And bang, £5,000 disappears. You know, this is what we should be doing. And we actually are already doing it, but we're creating from this fear and loss. So if you move your frequency, if we are alpha and omega compounded in fear in a frequency of F sharp of fear and hate, then what happens if you take all that you are, you don't need to know that, you just change your vibration. And then you create this thing. It's like opening a door and universal law comes out. And I mean, the police have had me I've arrested police officers. I'm 5'4", and there's police like this. And I just said, if you don't stop doing what it is that you're doing, I'm obliged to arrest you because you're impersonating a police officer. And he's like swinging his handcuffs saying, no, you like it, don't you? Like this to me. And I said, I'm not kidding you. If I have to get out of this car, I will arrest you. And so I did. And so as soon as I put my hand on, I said, I've now got grounds to believe that you are breaking the law and I'm obliged to prevent you from breaking the law. And as I put my hand on him, all of my belief in the authoritative hierarchy system fell down behind his eyes, and I saw it. And it was like, and obviously then I'm on the floor and they've got 3 other guys and they've thrown me down on the floor and handcuffed me and throw me in, and they're shouting, you're going to the court. And I said, I want to go to the court. Put me in the court and let's see where your contract is with me. And so they haven't got one. It didn't get to the court. They had to drag me out of the cell in the end. And I'm holding onto the door, screaming, no, I want to go to the court. And they're like, oh, she's crazy, you know. So this is what we're teaching people, stand in that. There isn't a contract. If I have a contract with anybody, it is the creator of universal law. That's it. Whatever that is, whoever that is. And what they've done with like you said before, using these different tools, just put a big circle around it. All of it is created with the same stuff. We don't know what that stuff is, but we've created common law with it, contract law, businesses, a persona, this reality houses, whatever it is. We don't need to know what it is. And that's what keeps it, the magic, I think, pure. When we start to say it's this, and we start to argue with the next part of our universal collective consciousness, if you like, manifesting another being, and you call it natural law, so it's not, doesn't register that I'm talking about the same thing as you, or we're talking about common law. It's the same thing, guys. Do we not all want the same thing? Do we not want to restore our rights to use this wonderful thing, whatever it is, right?
So would you say like keeping us in this fear state, in this kind of negative vibration though, is something that would be considered some spiritual warfare, because it's not keeping us to where we have the ability to be in that loving nature when we can be put in a higher vibrational nature? By keeping us in the low vibe nature, it's feeding some our energy is feeding something aside from the economic system.
Yeah, well, the economic system, if you look, these commercial systems, such as the Securities Exchange Commission, other ledger books, or is man-made structure representative of our energy, is recording our energy being credited, invested in fear and hate. What if we had our different set of ledger books? It's a choice. It really is a choice. We've got a choice now. We don't have to do this anymore. We could turn around tomorrow and say, you know what, if we all, can you imagine what if we all went and threw our driving licenses and passports and birth certificates over the wall at Downing Street or in Washington, DC, or set fire to them all? What the hell would they do? Why? Because in 1666, when they created this system, this Sesquitervie, saying that you were now Mr. Smith after the fire of London, they said, suddenly you were defined by the slaving, by the sweat equity task that you had to put in for what? To pay these people behind you who've got the weapons, to say, but you're actually paying them to be there, standing there with the weapons, to kill you or take your stuff off you when you can't pay them anymore. Well, that's the biggest psychotic apparition that I've ever imagined. And so I just stopped imagining that, because I believe that that's the spirituality, and all of that. For me, it's I don't want to define it as spirituality, because it's giving it a label. And so
Respect that.
when I agree with you that there is a conflict, and we are just, I think, representative of our own inner conflict that we have. And if we get rid of that, it doesn't matter if you're standing behind the bars in a prison and they've just sentenced you to 5.5 years and for drug trafficking and guns and all of this, because you went and helped people and they made this bullshit up about you, and you're standing at the bars looking at the people who think they're free, and you feel more free than you've ever felt in your whole life, because you know that it doesn't matter what, you will not commit fraud on your soul. And I'm standing there, I've miscounted the days, and I'm screaming, come on, universal law, you're late. and it was my fault. It was human error. Obviously, I'd counted the days wrong. And exactly, I'd said to my family, look, I'm not going to pay them. They'd built this case against me to try to get me out of the community and to extradite me and deport me. And they couldn't, because I haven't got a contract. And so I said to my family, were like, please pay them. And I said, I'm not. They wanted 21,475 euros, which was 11 euros a day, which is 1%, because they were going to go to my credit file and try and take 1,100,000 for every 90 days. And I knew that. I said, I'm not paying you. But I said to my family, look, if I'm not out in 90 days, I'm wrong about all of this. It doesn't work on the 90 days tip cycle. Everything that I've said is not true. And so on the 90th day, if I'm not out, I'll put an appeal into going to the court to make a contract to pay them, because I don't want to do 5.5 years in a Greek prison. But
Right.
give me 90 days. So the community and my family all looked after my daughter for me, and I could go in there. I got 27 women out of there. I was in there for a reason, to help these women who absolutely got no rights whatsoever. They said that we've got the worst rights in the world, but the best prisons. And I was just like, I can't believe that that's how you've balanced this out for yourselves. That
It's sad.
really, really sad. And some of the women were annoyed at me because I'm giving them hope. They were like, you've got me in this corner, and they're like, you need to stop doing what you're doing because you're giving these people hope. I said, damn right, I'm giving them hope because I can get them out. And that was it. We didn't have a riot. We just went on hunger strike for half a morning. And the Essences, the governors, come flying in. What do you want? What do you want? And I just said, you need to tell these women that on the 1st of July, that all of these sentences under a certain, with these definitions, non-victim crime sentences were halved. One woman in there sentenced to 327 years. How is that even possible? 327 years because they wanted the family to buy the sentence at 11 euros a day. It's all commerce. So they had to, the governor came back in the afternoon and said, right, we've got 2 lawyers coming in to explain all of this. And yes, we should have told you, because I'd taken all the papers with me, about the legislation and the changes in the acts. This is my job. I go and I stop people having their houses stolen. So all of the energy that I put into learning are they going to come at you this way? Which jurisdiction is it that you need to rebut? Is it the contract? And it is just the contract. That's it. If I don't step into that legal fiction, administrative systems cannot recognize me. So then they took me from the prison after the 90 days to extradition deportation center. And the guy said to me, right, where are you from? I'm from the universe. Send me back there. No, what country are you from? I don't recognize countries. They're just borders in your mind. Well, what state are you from? I'm stateless. Where's your ID? Well, you're looking at it, and it's a sticky back plastic cornflake packet ID that we've made with a photograph on it, laminated. And he picked it up and he said, well, I don't recognize that. We can't. I said, exactly. That's why I'm not doing 5.5 years in the prison, because you cannot recognize me. Now, even a judge will tell you to not be able to cognize something means that I don't know what to do with it. It doesn't exist in my definition. So if you remain indefinable, they can't do anything to you. So they said that, I'm thinking, oh my God, the worst thing, put me back in the prison rather than send me back to Blighty with all the slaves, right? Please, I'd rather stay here in the prison than go back to that open air prison that everybody thinks they're free in. And so he said, oh, you're going to have to stay here until I've checked with every embassy that's registered here in Greece to see who's going to claim you. And I said, well, these are the words, claim. I said, well, I've already been claimed by universal law, which is why I'm standing here and not doing 5.5 years. And he said, well, I've got to check. I can't, I don't know what to do. So he put me downstairs in this really horrible cell. And I thought, God, that was Friday night. I better clean it. So I cleaned it all. And then on Saturday morning, the guy came with the keys and he went, hey, you Mrs. Whoever you are, you need to get out. And I said, who? Go where? And he said, you, whoever you are, you need to get out. I said, I thought you were checking with every embassy that was registered here in Greece. He said, I did, and nobody wants you. And I was like, oh.
They had to let you stay in Greece because of that?
No state exists for me. No country exists for me. No,
I mean, I just find that interesting. So I mean, are you able to travel outside of that country?
yeah.
And
Actually, even tomorrow, if people don't get this, go and have a look at stateless people's documents, right? Stateless persons' travel documents. Even as a stateless being, I've got a right to travel. Now, if you for example, if you lose your passport or your passport's expired, and you want to go and say, hello, I belong to Crown Corporation and the British Embassy is my recognised shop. I need the paperwork from you. They'll give you a piece of paper and you can go to 5 different countries on this piece of paper without any other ID. But if one of those countries is England, is where the paper was issued from, is your country of origin, you can't leave them from that without a valid document. However, there's also something called an evidence of life form. And
evidence of life?
Evidence of life. And this was the thing, probably the biggest trigger for me was in 2014. When I was going around and arresting people as the sheriff of Dorset, I don't mean people, I mean people pretending to be authorities like police and things like that, and judges.
Persons.
They were people impersonating police. They were people impersonating judges. There were people breaking the law, and they didn't have contracts, and they had no authority to act. They were representing a de facto system, and they called it pseudo law, even themselves. And I've got them on record now doing that just a few weeks ago, and a Zoom room court hearing that they decided to have about a restoration of rights that we've done. And this is what you have to do. You have to get them to say the thing that they've been doing to you is illegal. But you have to put yourself in that position to say, if I do this thing, if I secure you as a private corporation for outstanding debt and I take your assets using your code, can you stop me? Well, yeah, we can stop you. Okay, well, if you can stop me, then you can't do it, can you? You just set the precedence that a secured party creditor can be claimed against by the debtor. That means every single person who's got a debt in the whole world can turn around and say, jog on to their banks, to the loan companies, because when it is done back to them, the banks, for example, when I started doing this with the debts and saying that they've signed their consent to me, and I'm happy to discharge that liability for you on proof of contract. Well, you can't do this. You can't buy debt. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm looking at your website and it says that you buy debt. The bank doesn't buy and sell debt every day. You better go home because you haven't got a job because you just made yourself obsolete.
Right.
You get them to destroy their own apparition, psychotic belief, not you. You just make yourself present, put yourself in that position, take your number plates off, do all of these processes, and so it gets to the evidence of life form. So I'd gone to the doctor, found this evidence of life form. It's part of a court form process. So if me and you, I owed you money, or you owed me money, and we went past arbitration and we went into the court, I couldn't pay you after that point. I would have to pay the court, and the court would have to pay you. But you wouldn't be able to take that money without proving that you were alive, right? Now I got this document, and it's an N209 or 206. I was getting it upside down, and it says evidence of life on it. So I took it to my doctor, and I went in with somebody videoing me because we didn't expect him to do it. And I said, I need you to sign this document for me. And he looked at it. It says evidence of life. I said, yeah, I need to prove that I'm alive. So he said, are you feeling all right? And I said, well, actually, now I can think of it, I haven't been feeling all right all my life because, and now I know why, because there must be a system somewhere pretending that I'm not. If
Right.
there is a document that says evidence of life on it, and the fact that I'm standing in front of you is not evidence enough that I'm alive, then there must be somebody somewhere pretending otherwise. Anyway, fair point. I said, I'm the Sheriff of Dorset. I have to separate my legal fiction from myself. And so I need this document stamping. And so in the end, we started laughing. He was like, okay, so how am I going to prove that you're alive? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm blinking and breathing, take my pulse, breathe on a mirror, whatever it was. So took my pulse. And as he stamped that document, we were laughing, saying as if a piece of paper is going to make any difference. And I'm very happy. I'm sad to say at the same time, it does. As he stamped that document, it was like somebody just pulled the top off of me. And I was like, I'm outside, I'm laughing, I'm crying. The guy who was with me is like, are you all right? I'm all right. Then just completely, it's a spell. The reason why they use cursive being obviously curse, and Babylonian spelling and spells and words that don't mean the same thing. We've got the legalese, Latin Babel, and all of the dog Latin. We're saying things that we don't even know, or what we mean when we say them. And that was really the point of no return then.
Right. That makes sense. And I've been learning a lot about the language, the etymology, the root of words. And I find that to be very fascinating, how we've been conditioned with the dog Latin to not really actually realize. And it's all right in front of our face, but people just don't get it, which is, very, very strange when you think about it. But I guess what I would like to do is to learn about what exactly universal law community trust is. You said you guys started this journey about 6 years ago. What was the reasoning for the creation of
it,
the
it,
ULC trust?
it transformed from, first of all, it was when I did the organic energy project and the Ubuntu, I created these community trusts, and then we put them all together. I was going up and down the country shouting, grow food, put 5 hours in here, and be self-determining. So we started to create these community trusts. That morphed into something called land council. So we had the L and the C. And the land council was infiltrated by a government shill, and he took it upon himself. He exposed himself in the end, but I trust everybody, because you can't trust, if you don't trust yourself, don't trust anybody. And obviously I trust myself to such a degree that I trust everybody. And this guy, we had thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people. I've done seminars and meetings and all over the country. And then it got infiltrated. We came over to Greece here to put these two parts of the equity and the legal fiction together. Obviously what they were doing to the people of Alada, stealing all of their rights, which they've done for 2,000 years. And they've got, obviously, they've got the 5 hours a week, the growing the food, the bartering system, the exchange mechanism, where we didn't in England. They were saying, no, I can't grow food, I don't want to do that. And, you know, look where we are now with the upcoming famines that we're going to have if we don't do something, which obviously this hopefully is going to get a message across to people about what very simple structures process you can do to start yourself off. And then he exposed himself screaming in a vinery. I was putting the vines and he's like, I'm under great stress. I said, what, from the olives? He said, no, I've got to finish this contract. Who are you writing a contract for? And it turned out he was writing a contract for Northants Council. He told me that. And I said, look, one of those two things can't be true. You can't be on Facebook and doing all these things with me and teaching people how not to pay their council tax and still get a contract working for a council. And that was it. And it turned out he was a paid shill who'd been paid to come and not only get me out of the way, but also to exterminate my dad and steal his property on behalf of Bradford Council. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And that was in the UK?
Yeah.
Okay.
In that non-geographical state people call the UK.
Right, right.
And so I went back to England then. Everybody's like, he went back with this story that I was a fraud, that I'd been arrested over here for fraud, and that's why I wasn't in England. I used my evidence of life form to actually travel from Athens, Ikaria, Athens, Brussels, Manchester. And when I got to Manchester, the only time I had a problem, big butch woman was standing there and she went, you can't come through here with that. So I said, so why not? So she said, it's not valid. So I pulled the one out that I'd got the Queen of England signed for Anthony Santiago Martin so that they could steal the gold from the Greeks and launder it through the Philippines, which is where Unisara and Jasara bullshit comes from. And they said, I said, well, I'm sure the Queen of England's going to love to know that you have declared her document as invalid, and that means she'll have to give all the gold back that they stole from the Greeks. So I said, I wouldn't want to be responsible for that, would you? I said, maybe you should take that paper and see as to whether it is actually valid. So she went up the stairs in Manchester Airport and they're all looking out the smoke glass windows at me. I'm like, hi. And she came back and you could see all of her persona was completely different. She was like, well, I'm going to let you through just this once. She said, but normally you have to have a passport. I said, there's nothing normal about being a Vatican debt slave, love, but have a lovely day. And I'm walking through there and I'm thinking, I've said this to people, go and do it. Don't take your children with you. Don't put yourself in a position where they can use something as leverage. Go in your own free standing and exemplify this for yourselves and see for yourselves what call the Home Office. Is there another document that I can use instead of a birth certificate to get a passport? Yes, there is. It's a live born record and you have the equivalent of a diplomat's passport. Go and have a look now at the coronavirus quarantine policy. If you have got you've got diplomatic immunity. What are you all doing? They're telling you how to do it. But we just presume and he did it like this, so I have to do it. And my mum did it like this, so I have to do it like this. But we all have to be Vatican debt slaves forever because our parents were, really,
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Is ultimately the ULC trust, is it a private society?
We're all, well, what it is, when I say, can you define what universal law community trust is? We are a community of people who trust in universal law. That's it. It's not a trust, an express trust, the trust. It is trust in Greek is embastasini. It's that feeling that you have when you speak to somebody or don't. And it's that. So we trust. What did I do? I put my trust in universal law, and I found that it made me indefinable, and it kept all of this illusion somewhere else. Now I have a really beautiful life. You're standing in the middle of another country, You just found out, you know, that these people have stolen your house, the help of the council, been responsible for the death of your father, and all of this, this beauty around you. And it was a choice yet again. How do you respond in these circumstances? So spirituality comes in like this level, I think, if that's the word, where that energy that you are, I'm going to determine for myself how I respond to this will dictate and define my outcome state. And so just by putting your trust in yourself first, you're putting your trust in the universal law. By putting your trust in yourself, you're rebutting the presumption that you need a government because you can trust yourself. Structurally, if there's a word, it's 3 circles on a piece of paper is what they did to you. A trust within a trust within a trust. Hey guys, this is your mind, your body, and your soul. When you use that legal fiction, it's always mine. It belongs to the Vatican. And you have to buy your rights back as a privilege. Is that something you can trust? Can you trust the corporations as they stand there now, stealing your rights and, well, not stealing your rights, but implying that you haven't got any, or that
Right.
I take this chemical warfare in the name of medicine, or stop your businesses, or even use their money. No, put your trust back in yourself, and you can do universal things. So that would be if there is a possible definition of what universal law community trust is. It's putting our trust somewhere where nobody can imply they've got it.
Oh, I mean, I love it. I was reading this last line here, which kind of sums it up. We lost our trust in ourselves mostly by adopting a system of legal jargon, fiction, and commerce, and calling it law.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very interesting philosophical concept when it gets down to the core of it. And obviously, I can't cover everything the ULC Trust does in one interview with you, so I definitely want to be able to continue the conversation. One of the things I wanted to ask you about before I talk to you about this Alliance Council idea
Yeah.
is this idea of buying and selling debt, the buying any debt, selling debt assignment, and what kindness credits are.
Okay, so debt's a fiction, isn't it? What are we actually buying? We're buying your indebted mind, and we're exchanging it for one that doesn't include I'm a Vatican debt slave. That's really what we're doing. What does that look like? It looks like a few pieces of paper in the paper realm, and the steps there, they're all set out. You have the first most important thing is just a Proton email address so that we can communicate with you as securely as possible. And you just simply, what you're actually doing is you are retiring from crediting that legal fiction that you used to credit. So because your debt is their credit, is the administrative system's credit. So if you believe, if I can come to you and say, you owe me this money, and if you don't pay me, I'm going to take your house. So you pay me. Whose presumption was that? It was
The
yours.
person who paid?
Yeah, well, it was yours, the person who paid, but also my presumption that I'm coming to presume that you're going to pay me. I'm on a right number here. I can turn up at your house. And I say this to people. If I turned up at your house today and said, I've got a piece of paper here and I'm taking your car, and you said to me, where's your contract? And I said, yeah, I haven't got one. I've just got a piece of paper and these big clumpers behind me. You call the police. He says a crazy woman standing at the door. She's going to steal my car. She hasn't got a contract and she's got 2 big guys with her. And I would be, or I should be, arrested, shouldn't I? But because I've got a piece of paper, and you didn't know that when you signed the piece of paper that I've got a copy of, you actually created the credit that you then lent yourself back through this trust. And we'll talk about that in another one, about how you create equitable trusts. You are actually creating the equity through your need. I'm exercising my right to shelter. I need a house, is really what you're saying to the bank. The bank come along as the administrator of your financial services from your trust. And you're going to them and saying, I need to, they say, what is it you want the money for? All the time. What do you want the money for? You have to have a reason for a secured loan, like a mortgage.
Right.
Well,
Right. Like if you want to start a business or buy a home or whatever the case, you just can't borrow money just for the sake of borrowing it.
no, you have to. Why? Because you have to have a claim form. You have to claim against your trust for them to be able to account that we have been granted the assignment of consent to administrate, add to the administration of your of the law with our legal system. And because you came to us, we can charge you an admin fee. This is what the banks say. So put your signature on here, and what your signature actually did, you created the promissory note, the credit note. That credit note then is entered into their system as noughts and tens on a screen somewhere. And then they send that, probably not even to you, but to the poor guy who's he thinks he's got to do this too with the mortgage. He's the one selling the house, and it goes to his mortgage company. It doesn't even actually go to him unless there's any difference between the mortgage and the asking price. But even at the point where there is, and let's say he's made some profit, which I hate the word of, but what we're doing is we're profiteering and capitalizing on our rights. If we just stop doing that, the guy I want to, let's just finish up what I'm saying. So the credit goes onto the screen, the mortgage company, the title deed then is released from its mortgage standing charge, and I can swap one legal fiction for another. The guy who gets the profit has to pay tax. Why? Because you use slave tokens, you use their money, you use their method of exchange. What if you didn't have to do that? What if you had your own trust? And what if your trust are the people in your community taught you all of the things that they've been taught? One person's taught all of this molecular science, one person's taught equitable law, one person's taught, I'm a specialist in science or bachelor's degree in commercial law. I hate saying commercial law because it's not contract law. And what if all of these people put all of that knowledge and information about this administrative system into one pot, and you as a mechanic came along, or a dentist, and said, right, I don't know anything about this, but I will fix your car for you. If you do the job for me directly without me having to go to your legal fiction private corporation to access your energy and your services, and I deal directly with you with our own method of exchange, you can count on me whenever your car breaks down. But obviously, and now our energy is equal, isn't it? I don't want a dentist, if my plumber, if my water's pouring out of my ceiling, I don't need a dentist. I don't need a doctor to help me fix my garden. So everybody's energy is equal and it is priceless. Stop putting a slave token value on your energy because it's priceless. And so with kindness credits came along because I wanted to send all of this amazing produce. The Greece has been absolutely trashed here. They've got all this amazing produce. They've been unable to create their own economy since having the drachma. They bought into the euro. All of the farms were bought by Piraeus Bank with €1 for the debt. So they gave all of this, put money into the system, put money into people's hands, or you can use your asset now to create this fictional money. So you can all have flashcards, rip all your house out, put IKEA furniture in there, and live like America. That's what the story was, the American dream. And the people talk about it here. We bought the American dream. And now then Piraeus Bank came along in 2010 and bought all of the farms from the Agorotiki Bank for €1. So that made them the biggest landowners. And so we did the same thing back to them. We wrapped up these debts against them. We said to them, if you carry on trespassing on our creditors' rights, you'll be entering into a contract with us knowingly. So first of all, we gave full disclosure. If you continue, you'll be accepting, after considering what it is that we've written in our Schedule A, that will cause you to have entered into contract with us, and the meeting of the minds is done. The mutual benefit, there's no mutual benefit. The mutual benefit in this process is that, first of all, there's for the first time ever a contract that has not been created in fraud. It's been created with all of its terms and conditions disclosed, as far as contracts can go, and not being fraud. And the charges then were accumulated by we've got 22 million people involved in this across the world now. And the amount of, if they get you to coerce you to use the name, is 20 million. Why was it so much? Because in the background, in the Securities Exchange Commission and the stock exchange, and through TIPS Settlement Service, it's called TIPS, International Processing System, I think off the top of my head, something like that. And they call it TIPS, works on this cycle, which is where you're then paying them, they're actually laundering your liabilities. And so that's how much, very easily, one account would make 20 million easily. So we said, right, if you try to force or coerce our creditors to commit fraud, use the legal fiction, which would grant you, your company, the right of use of everything that we know is sitting in the back of these grey screens, then you will be accepting the charges of 20 million. If you, so there's a schedule there you can see on the document page as an example. The reason why we put it all out there is for full disclosure. Nothing that we do is a purito as far as the people that we deal with. For the administrative agents, it's all a purito. It's all under non-disclosure. We're not telling you anything. It's private. So that's how we reserve the rights of everybody who's inside the community. And so then times credits kicks in. Oh, sorry. So going back with the debt. So the debt, we racked up 37 quadrillion against agencies in Hellenic Republic. We managed to do that with an assignment of 1.3 million people from a huge community, and that meant that we could rack these debts up really, really quickly, because obviously electricity company then tried to use the name on just one person as 20 million. And so we've got 20 million times 1.3 million straight away. It was just like, this is really universal sense. So we went in and we secured Hellenic Republic inside the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, that is the equity. Everything that Rome is built upon was stolen from the Greeks. Stolen from Alada. Hellas is rock of light. So we are standing on the rock of light. We are Hellenis, which is the people of the rock of light. And it was only when we started to allow this Vatican occupation of our minds, of non-entity system and their definition of God, eating the body of somebody and drinking his blood every weekend and pointing the finger at everybody else and saying, oh, you're in a cult, which is what we get. Now, as long as I'm not drinking his blood and eating his body, which for me is the cult of cannibalism, then I'm good to go. The rest of it, as long as I'm not doing that and committing fraud on my soul, I'm in a feeling place. So then, so we secured Hellenic Republic, and it was then that they obviously sentenced me to 5.5 years, because we were happy about that. And like I said, they said I was an international drug smuggler and guns importer, because they found a baseball bat in my car with 3 balls. That's what
because they found a baseball bat and 3 balls.
Yeah, I'd gone to this electricity company and told that. So I went to the police first and I said, I'm going next door to the electricity shop to tell them that if they don't connect that woman to electricity who's dying up the mountain from hypothermia, they have got a debt with my company, my organization. They haven't paid it, they haven't settled it. So I'm going in there to do a control of goods. I'm taking their tables, chairs, laptops, unless they connect this woman's electricity. And they just went mad in there. They were like, you can't do this. There's a video, we've got videos of this. And I said, well, I'm going next door to do it. And he said, you need a court order. I said, they've got a bloody court order here from 2013 from your own court saying that they can't cut anybody's electricity off, yet all of these people in your community and you are still paying for something that's already yours. And so I'm using this. He said, oh, go sit outside. I might be an hour. I said, I've got an appointment at the bank in an hour. I said, I can't. So I went upstairs, made a report to his chief of police. Both of them lost their jobs in the end. And another three people, two police officers resigned because of all of this. And we just gave them a ministering lesson in universal law, really, and it took a lot. Anyway, so I went upstairs, made the complaint, went back out across to the electricity company, and obviously he already knows I'm coming. I've just gone straight up the stairs into his office and said, right, you either connect that woman's electricity now, I'm taking all of this. And he just went, give me that thing. I said, what thing? He said, give me that document you've got. I said, I didn't know I've got a document. He said, I said, dear. So I turned to the guy who's filming it. I said, the police have already called him. So he scanned, he said, I've got to fax this to head office. So faxed it through, which was just a notice to say it was a removal of goods notice. I just racked up. And as he said, it's done, and he pressed the button. That was it. And I came down the stairs. As I came down the stairs, got in the car because it started to rain, and made a cigarette. And as I looked, there's a policeman with the window, it's tooled up here, standing at the window here, and another one at the passenger side. And he just knocked on the window and went like this. So I said, are you okay? So he said, yeah. He said, my chief wants to speak to you about these number plates. I said, your chief knows about these number plates because it's got a polytone on the number plate on mine. It's black Mitsubishi. And no, I didn't know, but the guy who was sitting in the car with me had this little bag of weed on him in his pocket. And because he was a Lenny's, they spoke to him first. So they got him in there. They didn't like it. Their egos were dented. The electricity had got put on. There was no money to be made today for their company. And so they were looking for something to get us with. And he provided it really by having this weed on him. And so they came out and they went, where's your weed? And I said, I haven't got any weed. So he said, well, we found this on him. He said, so now we're going to search you. I said, Craig, knock yourself out. Search me. So he's opened the briefcase, my laptop bag, and inside there was this. It did look suspicious when you look at it with suspicious eyes, but it was a aluminium envelope like this, and it had diatomaceous earth in it. Do you know that diatomaceous earth? Where you take it. So it did anyway. So he said, "What?" He went, "Oh, heroin." And so I looked at him. I was like,
if it's the stuff I think I'm thinking about, it's stuff that is used in people's houses to prevent bugs and stuff from coming in.
Yeah. So I said, Matthews, I said it gets rid of parasites and it's going to do a great job on you. And he just went, ah! So he's gone back in. Anyway, cut long story short, they'd gone to the house, searched it. Obviously nothing there, but the woman whose house it was very upset that these people in my house and now the police are here and all of this and the number plates and all of that, and who is she? And she's moving out soon, and I'd got another house to move to, and the guy who was with me was doing the plumbing for it. I'd given him a lift up to go to get on the boat, and they went in the house there, so they took him. Went into, because this woman saying, but she's moving into my brother's house. Obviously, I didn't know it was her brother. And so they searched the house, and there was some more in there that this guy had brought with him to turn into oil for somebody that I told him had got cancer. That's why he brought it.
Okay.
But he didn't tell me because he wanted to keep me out of it. I am very annoyed then, obviously, because I'd been kept in the dark, put myself in a position where I wouldn't have done what I did if I'd have known that. So we had a big, massive argument, obviously, and all of that. And that's where this 5.5 years thing came from. So when they opened the back of the Mitsubishi, I've got a baseball bat in there with 3 balls. Now, if you've got balls with it, it doesn't count. But they ignored the balls, took the baseball bat and called it a weapon. and then put it in the press that I was an international drug smuggler, a weapons dealer. And so for all of the people who are using Platts lose as a point of reference, it isn't because I help people. Well, really, it is because I help people, because they built that case. But everybody said that it was because that I steal people's money. Obviously, we use rocks, we use an exchange of energy. And so if somebody can show me how I can defraud somebody, and sometimes I feel like, you know, people have defrauded me because they don't do what they say they're going to do. But when you read all of these things, it just goes to show anybody with half a wit can just read through actually what is true and what's not. So just wanted to get that out there. That's the real reason why they tried to give me 5.5 years. And
I mean, that is crazy. And you have such an interesting story. I have another scheduled meeting in about 15 minutes, so we're gonna have to get ready to wrap this up. I am taking notes of stuff to continue the conversation on, and I do want to kind of dig like a little bit deeper into what the whole kindness credit system is. But just on a quick note, is it a way of exchanging energy for that for the ULC trust for the community? Is it sort of like
it's a kindness credit? So it's a little girl came up with the idea a long time ago that wouldn't it be lovely? What would we use instead of money? Said to her. Well, we would give one another kindness. Now that was, you know, we would give credit for helping the lady. We explain that, helping the lady across the street and all of this. That went in and was saved in my mind for a very long time. When I got to Greece, I needed to think of a way of being able to send all of this honey, oil, wine, herbs, and all of these produce, face creams and things like that to help the economy here for the people, and to help the people in England who were eating shit, really. I have to say it straight. And so by the time it's gone through customs and it's got all of its paperwork and it's got import duty, tax and all of that, people can't afford it. That's why there's so many people eating GMO crap. So I wanted to do something about that. If they're not going to grow their own food, yeah, I'll grow it for you and I'll send it to you. Right? So and I'm standing in Dionysus's garden in Nicaria, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? And suddenly, all of this parts that I've already learned and practiced together, it was this: bring Icaria in as a community, part of our community with a community trust of its own. The people all then, you're like your own organization, and the produce, if it is sold with rocks, right? If the paperwork is with rocks. So I went to the people, I said, right, give me 800 slave tokens worth of your products and I'll show you how you can create your own economy. And these people had only just met me. This was an incident in Samos at this point.
okay.
And so she gave me this produce that she makes these amazing creams and stuff. I sent it to England. And I gave her a promissory note that said 100 kindness credits. So kindness credits is the exact opposite mechanism of the fiat currency. So fiat currency is times 8 plus the 1, which is the token itself, the piece of paper or the card, plus the receipt that it creates. So it's 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 10. 8 of those are fictional, and then you've got the token and the receipt. Okay, so that creates the 10. So what did we do? So divide it by 8. Okay, so 1 kindness credit is the same as 8 slave tokens, tax-free.
Okay.
Now, if I go and buy something and it's got tax on it, really the product is worth, let's say it's 10 euros, 10 pounds, and the tax is 20%. Then the real cost of the product is 8 euros, isn't it? £8. I'm giving £2 to somebody, some terrorist system to go and build bombs and weapons with. So I don't want to do that. I just want your healthy produce. So we filled the van up. In the van is the private property then. So it's like me putting my clothes from my wardrobe in my hat, my wardrobe, my shoes, my thing. It's my property because I bought it at source. And I paid my tax with the currency that I bought it in. So how many rocks do you want? And that's what happened in my shop. So I opened the shop. They didn't believe me to start with in the caveat. I'm saying, if we use rocks, you pay your tax in rocks. And they're like, oh, she's crazy. She's talking about the story of Kronos. So Kronos, this history of Kronos and their history is that Kronos was eating Earth's babies. How do we feed Kronos our babies? With the birth certificate. So to stop Earth eat Kronos eating the baby when it was Zeus. So he'd eaten all the babies up until Zeus. When she had Zeus, she was fed up with it. So she wrapped this big rock up as a baby and gave it to Kronos, and Kronos ate it. And she hid Zeus, which is us. So we are the deity, if you like. We are the gods, or what we would call the gods of the creation, that was saved from being eaten by Kronos. But now we give our babies to Kronos, Crown Corporation, the Corona system, devour. So they thought I was talking about this. I'd never even heard about Kronos because I'd had a Vatican education. And I'm like, who the hell is Kronos? And so the guy who was the house, I said to this guy who was going to have his house stolen by the church, I stopped them with it, moved it into the trust, and discharged the liability with a promissory note to the church using a secured account to do so, which is the national insurance account number, to back it with. So they couldn't argue with their own system, could they? They couldn't stand there and say this isn't valid, because if you say it's not valid, then all your system collapses. I'm just using your system. And that's what I want them to do. So we opened the shop. I said, let me use. He said, what can I pay you? I said, I don't want your money. I said, just let me have 5 years right of use of the shop, and I'll turn it into a shop. There's a garden downstairs underneath his house. I turned it into a shop. So I opened the shop. All the people that I'd stopped the electricity companies from cutting the electricity off brought us honey and oil and tea and food. So we were making some flackies from the guy who's got killing the animals and vegetables from people's gardens. And obviously, first day we were open, the police come. So I was like, you can't come in. What do you mean? Where are your papers? What do I need any papers for? You run the shop. Define shop. You're selling things. Define sell. You're taking money. Define money. Euros up. I have to stop you there. Because I don't accept your dirty, filthy slave tokens in my exchange, I haven't got a contract with you. And because I haven't got a contract with you, you're now trespassing. So if you don't right now, I'm going to arrest you for trespass. Now, at the point where I said to them, you can't come in here without these rocks. So don't look like you've got any kindness, so you have to have some of mine. So I gave them a rock. One of them went like that, wouldn't take it. The other one took it. As they're leaving now, walking really, really fast away from me because they've just been humiliated in front of everybody. And everybody was like, oh, the police are coming, they're getting ready to hide. And away they ran. And so they walked very quickly. And I've gone up the steps after them shouting, oh, you've stolen my money. Like this, chasing after them, like jumped in the can, legged it. Now all the town heard about that. And so then they sent the tax. So the tax is standing on the other side of the road. They didn't dare come in. And I went out and I said, do you want something? Well, even if you're paying even if you're using rocks, we've got a right to see your books. We haven't got a right to see my books, but because I'm very kind, I don't mind showing you them. I've sold 10,000 coffees this year. I've only been open like a week. I've sold 10,000 coffees this year. How many rocks do you want? Dying. How many you want? How many do you want? They're all down there on the beach. Go and help yourselves. Have a lovely day. Then they sent the environmental health. Even if you're selling rocks, that's what they said, that I was selling rocks. I said, if I've got people who are stupid enough to buy a rock off me, then what does that say? As if they're buying rocks. Right. So they said, even if you're selling rocks, you're giving people food, and we've got a right to come and see your kitchen. And the guy who was with me just said, if you go to this woman's house for your tea tonight, do you call your friends to check her kitchen? And he said, no, of course not. He went, exactly, it's private, shut the door on them. That was it. And so what happened then over time is the people then came to us and were like, we want to do it too. So the following year we had little maps, and the people were putting 48 slave tokens into a pot in the shop. They take a little card and a map, and on the back of the card are these little 6 squares, and they would have a number written on, an account number. So we take the 48 slave tokens, write it in a ledger book with an account number on the back of the card, give the creditor the card, and they would then use the card in these shops that were on the map to go in the shop in exactly the same way. We had horse riding, scuba diving, surfing, souvenir shops, restaurants, all sorts, are all involved in it. And they would give them the card, make their order just the same, and they would clip off however many little tokens it is. So one would be £8, say for slave tokens, two would be 16, and so on. And they'd write a receipt, like the old, do you remember the cards reader before it was chip and pin, and it would look like your your shoes measured? It was that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
It did remind me of a shoe measure. That's funny you said that.
Yeah, it was a triplicate. So the creditor got the original. Always the creditor keeps the original, because that's how we screwed ourselves by giving the original away. So the customer kept the original. The shop kept their copy for their supplies, their stock, and they would bring the other copy to the new bank. And then they would turn this piece of paper, which was the receipt, they'd come in and say, hi, you've got 8 slave tokens behind the counter for me. Here's my receipt. We look at that. It's got the card number on it, yeah, and a little token, the little square, yeah. And so we'd swap the token, which was the rock, really, for the £8 or however much it was behind the counter. So we were a holding account, keeping it private for the people. And that's just ballooned. Now what you can do is you can convert, you can do you can buy something on somebody's website, you can use a card payment facility, but at the front end, what you're doing on paper is you've done a money exchange from dollars to kindness credits, and then kindness credits at point of sale means that that transaction is private, and they have got no authority, no fingers in your pies, and no bombs, weapons, or war made in your Christian name.
Wow. You are a fascinating woman. And I'm definitely looking forward to conversating more. And I mean, I really apologize about having to cut it short, even though we've been going for almost 2 hours.
Really?
No, we have, honestly, and it's been a great conversation. But what I'd like to do is I'll reach out to you by email either this evening or tomorrow, and try to schedule something for a follow-up potentially for next week.
Nice.
So that way it's not too short, and that way we can I can go over a lot more of this in detail, and then talk to you a little bit more about this Alliance Council idea. But one, I greatly appreciate your time. I really do. And before we do wrap up today's interview, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to share before we do wrap up today?
Just really to get as many people together as possible, and to be able to help as many people restore their rights, put away all of the hesitations. One thing that I would like to say is, don't think about how it is you walk. Then when you're walking, you just can do it. When you start to think, how am I walking on these 2 pieces of bone, and what am I doing here? You can't do it, because your ego has stepped into the autopilot. You have an autopilot. Let the autopilot guide you. Really.
Well said. Well said. And I'm definitely, like I said, I'll definitely have everything linked down below. And ultimately, when we get into the discussion, because me and you have talked a little bit privately about this Council Alliance thing, when we get into it, ultimately, it's just what you said. It's bringing together all these different peoples and groups and trying to work together for the greater good.
Yeah.
A gathering of tribes. It seems like a lot of people like factions and like to be tribal and be in their little cliques and their little groups, which is fine, but they can all come together under one umbrella and still work together and still work within their groups too. And it doesn't take away, it just adds. So Yeah, if you could bear with me 1 minute, I want to go ahead and wrap up things on this end and stop recording, and then I will talk to you for one quick second.
Okay.
As I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have links down below for everything that we talked about today. If this happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos and you enjoyed this, definitely explore my channel, check out my playlist section. I would also encourage you to follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have backups of all my videos and post up extra content. And make sure you subscribe, hit the like button. I'd encourage you to hit the notification bell so sometimes YouTube will notify you when the videos come out. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.
Yes.
All right, just stop recording.